And Mijas, and I'm joined this evening by Anne. Good evening, Anne. How are you?
Hi, Bill. I'm fine, thank you. And you?
I am very well, thanks. Now,
Good.
we're going to get straight into things, Anne, because we have a guest on this evening, and I'm going to let you introduce him. Oh, wait
Yes.
a minute. Wait. Okay, here we are.
You can see him
Neil,
now.
welcome,
Neil
Neil.
Hesketh of
Hi,
Suooprt
Anne. Hi,
in
Bill.
Spain. Hi, Neil. How are you doing?
Good. Thank you. Good.
Good.
It's nice
Keeping
to have some
busy?
warmth for a change.
Yeah. Well, the weather, you mean, is changing?
Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah, nice.
Feel better already.
Changed very suddenly, which is quite pleasant. I see there was people outside on the beach today.
Yeah,
Oh, really?
it was warm today.
It was. Yeah.
No, it wasn't bikini weather. You know, my bikini's still in the box for the summer. You
You've
know.
still not got the thong out, have you? Okay.
So Neil, I'm gonna be here, but I want you and Anne to have this conversation because we're dealing with something which I think is very, very important, which is care in Spain. And I as a counsellor, I end up in contact with a lot of people, and what I'm finding is that we have got an aging, and I'm thinking about the foreign population, but we have an aging population, certainly here in Mijas. People who retired here 20 years ago and are now getting on and are losing partners. And there are issues sometimes about mental health. There are issues sometimes about isolation. But these are things that I think are not going to go away. And I think people find it very hard to know what to do because they very often don't speak Spanish. So even if they can get hooked into the health system, let's just say for some mental health attention from a psychologist or whatever, the chances of them being able to use that service well without speaking really good Spanish and expressing these complex ideas in Spanish, even for us Spanish speakers, is not always that easy just to express, you know, what's in your head.
I mean, the most obvious would be the family reunification visa. But I did a webinar yesterday. A couple of our solicitors who are sponsors up in Alicante, and it doesn't seem that easy to even come by. Do you know anything about it, Neil?
No, I mean, I think family reunification is essentially for your parents if you've been supporting them financially for a period of time. So you can't just dial up and bring over mum and dad and bring them here if they've got a bit of dementia or that the hip is not doing. You have to prove that you've been financially supporting them for a period of time to at least, I believe, the minimum income level, the famous minimum income level. So no, it's not easy at all. I think people assume that they can bring over mum and dad when things go wrong, and it's just not the case.
Yeah, I don't know if it's this 7,200 a year, is it?
Yeah, I forget the exact amount. I know you need to show evidence. I mean, what's really? I mean, I'm talking obviously from a British perspective. If you're an Irish passport holder or the older person is, or you're in another European country, obviously it's a walk in the park in comparison. But from a British point of view, it's only now that this has been put to the test about whether this will work or not. And I think, probably this time next year we'll have a good raft of case studies of it working or not working. But it's not as easy. That the emphasis is on the financial support. So I suppose the trick is to prove that you've been passing to that elderly relative or the person that's going to come and live with you an amount of money for at least a year regularly, that they can't survive without you financially. That's my understanding.
Yeah, unless they're under 18, unless they're a minor, then you can.
Yeah, no, of course. Well, of course, but that's a child. But we're talking here.
It could be a grandchild that's coming over to help, potentially.
We're talking about parents. Obviously, if your children are in other countries, and I believe that 25 of they're financially dependent, isn't it? And that they can come and join you and can prove
I'm not sure about that. I thought it was 21.
It might be 21 or 25.
Yeah.
But if they're dependent on you, they can come. But I'm talking about the mums and the dads. We all assume that our parents can come and live with us here in Spain from Reading or Torquay or wherever it is. And it's not that easy anymore, I'm afraid.
No, it isn't. This is what Bill and I were saying. Social services here are sadly quite well, they're different, let's say, to the UK, and I think in a lot of cases they're quite lacking. It seems to be an assumption that we wealthy, let's say Brits, that we're not, but it's that we have enough money to be able to pay for private carers, and that's not always the case.
Yeah, and I think you tend to forget, because we've heard a lot of bad news about Britain and the British system, that Britain on a world scheme is a very wealthy and advanced country, and the system of social security in Britain is fairly widespread. Here in Spain, the emphasis, and it's a clear message we need to say to everyone that's moving over here, is based on the family being around you. And it's deemed very strange if a family member doesn't come into hospital or take an interest. And there's no natural, in the same way there is in the UK, a natural system to replace that. So people who do find themselves in a bad way, both coming out of hospital, are going to find that they are going to need other support, or have money to pay that support. And that is a reality here, or rely on the different voluntary groups. But I think everyone coming over needs to be aware of. Shall I perhaps just explain
I was just going to say, I can remember when my mum was in hospital, and the nurse said to me, "So you'll be back at 6 o'clock, will you?" Because I said, "I've got to go off." "You'll be back at 6." And I said, "Will I?" "Yes, because that's feeding time." And it's an assumption that it's assumed that you will return to help with the feeding. And if you don't have that person, it's very difficult.
And those who've got Spanish friends and relatives will know the stories of, even for relatively mild conditions in hospital, a relative sitting in the chair overnight and sleeping overnight, and the nursing staff looking after that relative. Whereas, of course, it's the other way in the UK, where, I mean, relatives can't wait to get out of hospitals, and the staff can't wait to get them out. It's the other way around here, and people really need to be aware of that. And have a plan. Perhaps if I highlight sort of my role, why I'm here with you today, Anne.
Please do.
Because I was involved in setting and founding a joint project between the British consulates and the University of Birmingham, which is an online directory project called Suooprt in Spain. And what Suooprt in Spain is these days, it's a Spain-wide directory of support and voluntary organisations and organisations in the public sector to help, with an emphasis on British residents who have potential welfare and vulnerability issues. So people who are getting older in life that might be falling into Alzheimer's conditions, people that just come out of hospital, but also we've extended it over the years to include child protection interests, obviously gender violence issues. So it's an online directory that was backed by the British consulate. It's got about 1,000 entries on the directory. You can search by your local area. So you can put in Mijas, you can put in Marbella, you can put in Fuengirola, and it will filter the organisations that cover your area for a variety of issues to do with welfare. So we're not a lifestyle guide. We don't explain how to get the new NLV visa and things like that. It's really, we're there, unfortunately, for the nasty things in life, when things go wrong. But what it is we're signposting people, we're pointing to people to organisations. And what we find is we get not just a lot of people themselves in problems, but we get people's relatives back home in the UK who, Auntie Anne's fallen, has just come out of hospital, or Uncle John is unfortunately got elements of Alzheimer's, or any of those kind of issues, but they don't really know where to begin in Spain. So we want to put them in touch with local organisations, voluntary organisations, and statutory authorities that can help them, not just the person, but the relatives in the UK as well. So that's kind of what I'm bringing to the conversation today, so that viewers know. So it's called supportinspain.info, and you're welcome to go and have a look.
Yeah, I've put the link up on the ticker at the bottom there, Neil, for people
technology.
It's wonderful, isn't it? It's wonderful.
Yeah, I mean, I don't wish to criticise the British Embassy or the consulate, but we have spoken to them about several cases, and we were told it's beyond their remit. They deal only with vulnerable citizens. I can't think of any more vulnerable than a poor old lady who was in her 80s and was owing money to the residential home she was living in. She had dementia, and she was told that unless she paid her bill by Monday morning, she would be on the step with her bags packed. And I mean, we as expats in Spain International, it wasn't for us, but it was up in Alicante. We had to fight to really get the consul involved in this, the consulate.
Yeah. There's no doubt.
What is their definition of vulnerable then?
Yeah. Yeah, well, I obviously don't know that. I don't work for the consulate, but there's no doubt a lot of onus in Spain falls on the voluntary organisations, whether it's the ones run by the foreign expats like the Age Concerns, the Age Cares of this world, or indeed the Spanish organisations, which are very good and I think are sometimes overlooked by foreign residents. And by that I mean people like the Red Cross, the Cruz Roja, who are very well resourced and supported. Caritas, which is obviously the local, the Roman Catholic Church charity, which is very, very active in local communities, and also the town halls themselves. I think we as foreigners tend not to mix with the town halls. We're not used to the way the town halls work. We perhaps think they work way back at home. But I would advise anyone who's over here who's potentially got issues or neighbours with issues coming down the track to talk to the social services at the town hall. It takes a while to get an appointment these days, clearly. So there's a lot of help there within the system. And at the end of the day, the British consul is a few people, and they can only work with the most critical, potentially life-threatening conditions. And they will admit that quite openly, that a lot of the social issues that people come across living in Spain is just not in their remit, and really never has been. Yes, my advice is to anyone who's got relatives in Mijas or area or back home or whatever, is at least be aware of what kind of organisations are available locally. We've got things in Support in Spain to guide them. There's a very good description on what benefits are available to people in Spain and they live here, and at least have a kind of awareness of what's going on. Because when situations like that happen, Anne, you can't rely on the British consulate, because I think the view is we've taken a free decision to come and live in Spain, and therefore we should be working with the Spanish facilities and organisations. I mean, does that make sense?
That does make sense, but it doesn't necessarily make sense to the Brits who don't know about these associations. So your support in Spain is
people need to stop aware as well. I mean, my giving you guys can hear me all right, can't you?
Yes, we can hear you fine. Yes.
I mean, my mum just broken her wrist in Liverpool, in the UK, and I would just say the treatment from the NHS and the social care has been fantastic. I mean, really outstanding at every single stage. So a big thumbs up for the British system and the NHS there. Surprisingly, but it's been very, very good.
That's nice to hear, because we don't hear that very often.
No, it isn't. But I mean, we felt it was like private service. It was just amazing, the speed. Aintree Hospital in Liverpool. Anyway, good plus. But even ourselves, my brother's in Britain. I'm obviously British. When mum falls and breaks her wrist, it's disorienting. We don't quite know what the system is. How can we get from care to care? Who do we need to ask? What do we need to do? And that's in Britain, in an English-speaking environment.
Yeah.
And we've all been around the block a few times. Imagine what it's like for someone who doesn't speak Spanish in a hospital where they don't understand the system. It must be quite traumatic. My advice is to anyone, elderly relative or someone who's perhaps vulnerable, is to be aware of what the system might be if things go wrong. And it's a big ask, because we don't do it back in our home countries. And my example's is a good example of that. But we're away from our home environment. So make that little bit of an effort to find out what the organisations are. What might you do if things don't go wrong?
It's similar, Neil, to what some people criticise, having a funeral plan. I mean, if you don't speak English, you're elderly, you're in a horrible situation at the time. If you've lost a loved one, you don't know what to do. By having a funeral plan, it's just one telephone and they do it all for you. I mean, I know people say you don't have to have a funeral plan. You don't, but it must be absolute godsend at the time.
Yeah, and I think what we don't all realise is children of elderly parents. I mean, when the married couple is together, it's very stable and they help each other. But the minute bereavement occurs, the minute grief occurs, to be blunt, that's when the wheels start to fall off the bus. And so I think having the funeral plan in place, and there's some very economic ones around, are great. And it's a good example of thinking ahead. Some really good groups out there that help people. And I was speaking to one of them when doing together Support in Spain. And I said, what's your biggest issue with people? This is actually a group in the sort of Denia area in Alicante, very well known. And she said to me, Neil, the biggest plan is that when people come over here, they don't have a plan. They don't know what they're going to be doing when things go wrong. And it's easy to do, and it was easy to do clearly before Brexit. And it sounds a bit preachy, it sounds a bit nanny-ish, but if we can just encourage more people to stop and think, what happens when my mum or my dad goes? What happens if they fall and break their hip tomorrow? They're in that house up the 20 steps and it's a bit of a car ride to the shop. What are we going to do? And if some people could just take a few more extra steps now, they could make the coming years a lot better for them.
Absolutely.
I think.
Absolutely. I mean, you might know the answer to this. I don't know. Maybe you don't. I have always been led to believe that after 5 years as a resident, when you apply for your permanent residency, you can also apply to join the public health system, whether you have insurance or not.
That's right, and I've heard cases of it happening, but I know it's not consistent.
That's my question, because I wouldn't even know how to go about applying for it.
And to be consistent, all the information is online. I'm going to confess I don't have the minutiae of the detail.
No.
Here today, but the theory there is you are entitled to that if you're not entitled to it through any other route. And what they tend to do is they look at if you're a British pensioner or you're on the S1 or it's linked to a family member or something like that. So in theory, not many people should need to go down that route because potentially they're a pensioner age, unless they're underage. If they're underage, and the chances are they've been working in Spain anyway, so they've paid in social security. So it shouldn't actually technically affect many people.
No.
Don't have the detail to hand today.
I know that up to the age of 65, if you wanted the Convenio Especial, it's cheap. It's €60 a month. That's fine. But beyond 65, it jumps up to €157 per person. Now that's a lot of money.
Don't forget, even after Brexit, you can still, as a British pensioner, get access to healthcare in the UK. You can't if it's after Brexit. If you were a pre-Brexit withdrawal agreement person, you can still go back to the UK for treatment. You can't.
What I'm saying is maybe there's €157 per person, and it's a couple that have now reached 65 and not quite, perhaps 66, 67 to get their UK state pension. They could actually cancel that and join the permanent, if they have a permanencia with their residency. Then is what we're saying.
We can. I can't give you the process today off the top of my head, but there's two places that you would want to go and talk to, which would be the obviously your local health centre, and also the Institute of the INSS, the Social Security Office.
I might look into
get the details from them.
Give some feedback on it. It might be helpful for some people.
I mean, I think what will be really good, obviously, and through Bill's forums and yourselves, and if people have actually done that, because it's very much a case study basis. I think I've heard of cases.
That's right.
But you can't quite pick them off the apple tree yet.
No, we must remember though that nothing in Spain is standardized nationally. It all boils down to provincial, regional. I mean, everything changes. We always say
no, it isn't, and there's different interpretations. It depends on the day.
But we always say, ask a question of us. That's fine, but please tell us the town you're living in and the province, because it might be quite different where you are to how it is where I am. And it's quite difficult to understand for some Brits because they say, well, for goodness sake, what is the law in Spain? Well, the law in Spain is that, but it can be interpreted differently by the provincial legal system.
And
it does make it confusing.
There's a lot of leeway. There's a lot of leeway for interpretation. I mean, I think at the end of the day, when you sit and read the actual national rules, they're pretty similar. But each area, and this is a historic thing to the days 100 years ago when Spain didn't have very good roads and communication wasn't very good. People are allowed to interpret things in their own ways, and it's just something we have to get used to. When we say on support in Spain, this is the process. But before you do anything, please check and be prepared for at least one more visit than you expect to get the document. But I think sometimes we as foreigners, as Brits, think it's somehow victimization against us. It's not. The Spanish nationals have the same experiences as well, and we all need to get used, because they are quite cheap in the scheme of things, to use gestores a bit more. I know some are better than others, but use them for some of those fiddly paperwork things, which can be really useful. Trusted, recommended ones.
Especially if you don't speak the language and don't know which forms you've got to fill in.
Yeah.
Totally.
Absolutely. Bill, you were going to say something?
Yeah, no, just that. Yeah, any of these processes can be difficult, and they can be made difficult sometimes. And my wife is Spanish, and when we go to do anything, she takes half a filing cabinet with her. She takes everything. And I'll take the Libra of the family, and I'll take this, and I'll take that, and we're not used to that. So it is complicated, but I think what you're saying, Neil, it has been true of a lot of the Brexit stuff. We only really find out how things are done once we've seen things not working and see things being turned down, and we think, right, okay, so you can't do it because of this and this, so that needs to be sorted before that can be done. Even I've been contacted by a number of people recently about the blue badges for the disabled badges for cars, and they say, oh, can I get one of these from the council? Well, actually, no, you can't. There's a long process, and it can take 2 or 3 years sometimes before the badge actually appears, and some people just say, I give up. And obviously, it's not something I can help on an individual basis because I don't have that level of knowledge.
What is the? Can I ask you just, Bill, in the context of Mijas, what is happening with, say, either UK blue badges or EU UK badges, blue badges? Is Mijas Town Hall accepting them in the local police or not?
No, they're not. I mean, I think as with many things, it might come down to an individual police officer
on
saying,
the day type
okay,
thing.
fine.
Job's worth.
But strictly speaking, I know people who have had their cars towed, and actually because their UK badge was out of date.
Well, that would be wrong anyway, even if we were still in the EU.
If it was in the EU, but yeah, I mean, people can have the cars towed, and I'm putting information out on a reasonably regular basis. The UK badges are not valid. Be warned. You might go out, you might park in a disabled space, and maybe nothing will happen, but you can't really argue the toss if the car is towed away.
And this also applies if you are a tourist, if you are a holiday maker.
Sure. Oops, I've lost Neil. He's just disappeared. Yeah, and
I think a lot more needs publicising about that fact because they won't necessarily know it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've said to people, because they've asked Anne, my mother, my father-in-law are coming over, and they've got a blue badge. Can we use it when they're on holiday or they're staying here for a month? Can we use it? And the answer is, well, no, you can't.
Not since Brexit, I'm afraid.
No.
There's another one.
Yeah, but again, and it's just one of these things that nobody thought about until it happened.
Well, much as, do I dare even mention the D word, the driving license exchange?
Oh God, I was asked about this today. I was up with
an update yesterday. If you can, in inverted commas, call it an update, just saying that there is no update basically, and it's still waiting in front of the Consejo de Ministros. Though we happen to know that there are issues from last year that are still waiting to be heard. So we're certainly not high up in the pecking order.
No. Well, I was with people today that are in that situation with the driving licenses, and they were saying to me, should we go and get our tests done? The medical test, and I said, well, it's a bet. You've got 90 days after you get it. And the question is, will this be sorted within the next 90 days? And I said, my feeling is it probably should be.
Yeah.
But I certainly couldn't guarantee it. And, if it's not sorted, then you basically lost your whatever it is you paid for it.
Whilst we as an association collaborate with the British Embassy, I must admit we had to not necessarily challenge, but certainly didn't agree with them in December when they said, we recommend you go and get your medical done now, because there's going to be a queue when the agreement is finally
Sorry
approved.
about that. It just went off. No idea. The computer.
That's all right. Which does mean.
Are we still talking about blue badges?
No, we're talking about driving licenses. The exchange of
Big one. I was just gonna make a point on blue badges, if I may.
Sure.
To me, that's one of the big disappointments of Brexit. It's a clearly vulnerable group there that's been completely overlooked in negotiations. And
Yes.
In theory, there should be negotiations going on between the British government and other governments, in this case Spain, to come up with some sort of convenio or agreement. But it's such a shame, and I feel for those people. On Support in Spain website and in other places as well, not just us, we've got quite a good description of how to get the disabled thing. It is doable, but it's, to go back to Bill's point, it's a 2-year process. So please, if your PAT is about to run out, or any, you think that you might be, they call it officially a third disabled is the term they use. You have to be assessed. Please start that process now, because I think it's just such a huge shame. And if you know someone that's in that position, please encourage them. It's doable. It's not that complicated as Spanish things do. It's just got to be patient. Anyway, that was my little preach about that.
I'm not sure if this is true, but I have been told, and it wasn't actually from Bob down the bar, but the degree of disability assessed in the UK may be different for the blue badge
totally different
than the degree of disability assessed in Spain for the blue badge.
Totally. And Spain is more rigorous.
Yeah, Sue is saying that the blue badges are given out much more freely in the UK than they seem to be in Spain. Yeah.
No, it's a different process. We can argue it for 6 months about what's right and wrong. But just basically, if you think you might be in a chronic position, sooner rather than later, please get in the system now.
Yeah, that's for residents. As I'm saying, I think more needs to be made known to potential tourists coming here that have disabled badges. They can't use them either.
Yes.
No, and I think that's terrible. Personally, I think that's terrible. But
I do. But then,
but when Spain is pushing very hard for promoting itself, whether it's individual councils or whatever, but it's promoting itself as a tourist destination, it has to, especially, and I'm going to say, I don't believe Brits should have special treatment, but in this case, I think this is something that's really not that complicated. And given that the Brits are still the number one holiday makers or tourists coming into Spain, I think there should be some discussions at least taking place to try to make.
Well, I mean, it's not just Britons. There's other third countries, Bill. There's a lot of North Americans, Canadians, and Americans that come here on vacation, as it were. And not everyone is nimble on their feet as they used to be. Yeah.
No, but then they've never been able to use their blue badge. We, as now third country nationals, is new to us. We were always
totally. But why not? Why not?
Sure.
Well, no, why not? It needs sorting, obviously.
Yeah.
Somebody should.
That's what I see. Sue's put a comment up saying go to social services. Yeah, I mean the full details are on the Support in Spain website and on other websites as well.
Right.
Yes, you do go to social services and it starts the process. But just very briefly, what has to happen is, in the first instance, you have to have an assessment by a recognised medical or
practitioner, doctor.
Yes.
Physician in Malaga, and they call it a 33% disability that prevents you from getting things like the bus and walking in car parks. So it's quite specific. And having done that, which can take between 6 months and a year, just because there's so many in the system, for Spanish people as well, not just for
everyone, yeah.
They then put you back again, and then you have to, with this kind of badge that you're such and such level of disability, you then apply for the badge that can take another 6 months. It is true that if there's a short lifespan, someone's very poorly and terminally ill, or on extreme humanitarian grounds, via the doctor, there is a humanitarian route. So if someone has a very, very short lifespan.
I mean, if you say it is also the Spanish. I know we had a lady on our organisation who's a paramedic, and she just wanted a no parking outside her house, basically. And it took a month to get, even though she's a paramedic, and it went through the hospital supporting it and everything. It probably didn't come through for a good year.
Yeah, no, I think it will improve. I think the government Andalusia, who are responsible for it, are aware of it. But it's a national problem, not just Andalusia.
Yeah.
And I've got faith it will improve, but not in the next 2 years. 3 or 4 years, it might be a bit better.
Something for you to be working on there, Bill. There we go.
What's that?
Something for you to be working on.
Oh yeah, I think there's a lot of things to be working on, to be honest. Yeah, but getting changes. What I've learned about Spain, and it's going to sound very critical, but a lot of my Spanish friends have criticized it as well, that Spain wants to do things its own way, and they're very reluctant to learn from what other countries have done and how they could use that experience to improve things here. They would rather just do it their own way. So yeah, it's you've always got to push the boundaries a little bit, but sometimes you're pushing against a locked door, because
they're very much a supporter of if it ain't broke, don't fix it, aren't they? We'll just leave it to continue as is. Yeah.
I mean, don't let's think countries like Britain are as perfect either.
No,
I think the Spanish tend to be more a sort of certainty oriented people, so things are quite fixed in terms of the system, whereas Britons, and particularly the Britons who've got the balls enough to come and move in Spain, tend to be a lot more individualistic, a lot more pushing the system, and they kind of come against this system that's quite solid and quite inflexible. And that's where I mean, let's remember that the people that move to Spain from Britain are the most adventurous. And so by definition, they're challengers and they're trying to do things differently.
You believe that? You really think that?
Well, I think it's huge on any level coming to live in Spain.
I know
changing countries, changing your culture.
Oh, no, absolutely. But do you really think they're the adventurous type? I'm not so sure. I kind of think those that are better studied as to what they require, the requirements of the country that they're going to, would be those that are going to live in France. They tend to be a different sort of British resident, if you know what I mean.
Well, I don't. I mean, being adventurous and being studied isn't the same thing. I think.
Well, no, in advance. I mean, to learning about what's required. I mean, I come across a lot of Brits that will turn around and say, "Well, nobody told me this," and I said, "Well, it wasn't for anybody to tell you; it's for you to find out." And I mean, I do understand how you're going to find out.
They wouldn't have been told in the UK either. It's just.
Well, no, I don't know.
No, I admire anyone that moves to Spain, even if they sort of make a mess of it and don't find out enough things before they come, because I think it takes a lot of courage.
Oh, absolutely.
For whatever good and bad reasons.
But they do tend to.
You've got to imagine that they come into a very stable system here that changes very slowly, and so that adventurism, if that's the right word, on top of a system that's very solid and secure, can create a bit of friction.
But that adventurism, as you put it, I kind of think it's rather more British enclaves that the majority of Brits would be seeking. I don't know. I could be quite wrong. I'm perhaps just talking about the Costa del Sol.
But, well, I think that's certainly one thing, and I mean, Mijas actually has the second largest concentration of British residents in Spain. I think the largest is on the Costa Blanca. I think I don't know if it's Oaxaca or Denia or that sort of area, which has a higher percentage of British residents. But yeah, I mean, we have a huge number of British residents here, I think they had to get used to things, because a lot of them have been here a number of years, and a lot of them got used to how things were pre-Brexit. And whilst in theory not very much has changed for us legal residents here, we have our healthcare all sorted and whatever, but they're getting older and they're finding themselves exposed to situations that they didn't have to experience before. They fall over, they used to get a bruise or a sprain, and they would go and just rest. Now they fall over and they break something and they have to go into hospital, and all of these things, or the partner dies, they're on their own now, and maybe they're not in good health, and they're looking, how could I maybe get some help from social services and things like that. So this older population is being exposed to more difficult situations than they perhaps did when they were just the adventurers coming out here. And I'm going to move.
Apart from that, Bill, you've also got the advancement in technology. I mean, your digital certificate, for example. If you're going to turn around and tell people that's what they ought to have, it's not the easiest. It really isn't.
It doesn't, but that doesn't even work for the people that have it.
No,
As we
it
know.
doesn't, but you know,
Type of piece of
no.
technology.
But I mean,
I try not to talk about it too much.
No, I mean, I know a lot of people that don't even do WhatsApp and they won't do emails.
Yes.
And they want a hard copy of through the pigeon post letters.
Yeah.
That is a global issue.
Yeah.
And I don't think any of us are really giving enough time to that kind of thing. You know, some people just don't use WhatsApp.
As Bill said, it's the aging demographics that we have here. It's the aging population, and we need to be a little bit more caring for them. I personally think, because we're all going to reach that age.
Yeah.
I think we forget as British people, and I notice it when I go back and spend time with friends in the UK who've now obviously got family members like mine who are getting older, how not that people in the UK dismiss their elderly relatives, but they're not expected to be by their side. It's acceptable to live a long way away and not visit, and no one socially sees that as a problem. Whereas in Spain, it's not like that. And people who come to live in Spain need to be aware of that. That we said at the very opening, the family is relied on, and it's weird that the family isn't together. And so we shouldn't forget that. I mean, are you still hearing me okay? Because I know this is quite a noisy room.
No, absolutely fine. Yeah.
I think Mijas, you said it's got this huge population of foreign residents, Bill. I mean, that's a double-edged sword, because there is obviously a huge amount of willing English-speaking people within Mijas or the greater Mijas area. And obviously, as we know, Mijas Town Hall has got one of the best, and has had for many years, best operations for foreign residents there in La Cala.
Sure. Yes,
that
very good.
lures people to this complacency that things will kind of be okay because they know. So it's a double-edged sword. It's very good, but also it's very bad, because perhaps people don't integrate as much in what Spain is. Perhaps they don't know their way around the Spanish system as well as they should do for when things got to go wrong. So that's a warning to everyone, really, is we hear it a lot. And what does it mean? Integrate, learn a bit of Spanish, make some Spanish friends, find out what these organizations do. Be curious, really, about what's around you, because it could actually save a life in a few years' time.
Well, I don't know if you know, but we've got started a year, 2 years ago, Brexpats Buddies, that is for purely for elderly people, or not necessarily even elderly people that are on their own, so to speak. And you just have to, on a WhatsApp, so it's free. You just have to, it's maybe just even a thumbs up, or say, I'm fine. You just, before midday, you just check in, basically. And each area that we've got, you have a volunteer representative who ticks you off the list. Okay, we've heard from them all. Everybody's fine, that type of thing. If not,
organisations like that, what Anne has, and others are just tremendous. And one point actually we've not made is these voluntary organisations, the ones we've got in support in Spain, Anne's organisation, one of the ones that you touch base with, Bill, rely on volunteer help. And
absolutely,
I think the big plea to the foreign language community is please think how you can donate and how you can volunteer a couple of hours a week. There are so many groups out there. There is something for everyone's tastes and interests. And if you're not good with people, there's handiwork, there's carpentry, there's driving people round. I think it's on all of us to give a little bit of our time.
Serving in a Deca shop or something like that. There's all sorts of things you can be doing.
Absolutely, Deca, charity shops.
I was with a lady today who runs an Alzheimer's support group via Age Care.
I know.
In Calonda, Carol. And she said one of the difficulties they've got is really picking up on what you were saying there, Neil, is older, they need a new tranche of, when I say younger volunteers, they might still be retired people, but not in the mid to late 70s, maybe.
I think there's a duty on all of us, in our 50s and 60s, to give a little bit of time in whatever way we can to charities, because with modern Facebook and WhatsApp, social groups, golf clubs and dancing groups and things like that aren't thriving either, because people now keep in touch on WhatsApp 4 or 5 times a day, and so there's not as much need to get together. The same way that country pubs in England are closing. People don't get together as much. And so we all need to say to ourselves, what can we do that little bit? It might not just be in a shop. It could be driving someone. It could be with a bit of secretarial work, a bit of freelance translation, help with a bit of bookkeeping. We've all got different skills. What can we do? And I think it's a duty in all of us, because Spain's given us so much. These voluntary groups, when things go wrong, are going to help us. So we've got to give a little bit back.
Absolutely. I mean, my Brexpats buddies, I'm delighted to say that I heard from one not so long ago who said, how nice is this? People are actually wanting to meet me on a Saturday morning for a coffee. And they're not even people that I know. That, it just shows how much they care for one another.
But we need to change our mindset, because it's not like the UK.
No, but they've met a new group. They've moved into different circles. They've now got a different group of friends. And being on your own, it can be quite difficult if you're in a big block of apartments or something and you just feel totally isolated. Don't speak the language necessarily. Not to say I would defend that, because everybody should be able to speak something. But and I just how nice is that? This person suddenly has a sense of feeling a belonging.
Yeah.
But that's it, Bill.
Couple of
comments.
The
older generation remembers it.
Sorry. But no, we're a couple of comments about digital certificates. Sue says her works fine and mine works fine, but when I had to update it, it took the guy in being a counsellor, I went into the office and said, look, this isn't working. It took him half an hour, and he was an IT guy, half an hour fiddling about with it to actually get the new one working. And the DGT app, Anna is saying that the digital certificate doesn't work with that, but I think that's the Clave app that the DGT use, and I can't get that to work either on my mobile phone. And it's I
must say I haven't tried. I give up. I don't even use mine.
No, I at the moment have a digital certificate that works, but that could change at any moment.
Yeah. And a lot of the elderly people that I see, they're pretty good with their mobile phones, but they maybe don't have a computer or a laptop at home. And some of these things are very fiddly to do on a mobile device.
And it doesn't recognize all of the
no, totally, and the drop down tabs you can't read, and it's an issue society is facing everywhere, both back in the UK, but it's obviously compounded here because it's different languages and a different system. So I suppose the key lessons from this morning this afternoon are plan ahead, investigate a little bit what's around you, look at websites like Suooprt in Spain, what will happen if things go wrong, volunteer if you can, be patient.
And don't blame it on Spain all of the time. That really annoys me. I must be true.
No.
Spain never wanted to leave the EU, And that's sadly, some of these people that are now moaning actually voted for Brexit, and they're only now saying, oh my God, I just didn't realise what I was voting for. Let me turn the clock back. Unfortunately, you can't. Yeah,
but it is what it is now. But I would certainly encourage people to go to the supportinspain.info website and have a look. There's a lot of information there. And also I put up earlier the info@supportinspain.info for people that might have suggestions about things they would like to see added.
Of course, it's a community project. It's an independent charity now. It's registered non-profit. So we're welcome to have ideas and suggestions. Very much.
And if they have any problems getting through to Neil and his support in Spain, then get on to us and we can contact him.
Well, I mean, obviously, Anne's tentacles are everywhere. You're very, very embedded in.
Yesterday I did a webinar with a couple of solicitors that were up in Alicante, and obviously, as I've said, the information is not standardized nationally. But one thing was raised. I was asked a question, and this is just nothing to do with welfare or anything. But somebody who has an NLV, a non-lucrative visa, after 5 years, it's never been known how much finance they have to show, how much funds in the bank. You get the non-lucrative visa and you get it for 1 year. So you show, as it stands now, 400% of IPREM, which is 28,800. In the second year, you have to show double because they give you a 2 and a 3 year visa. And in the 4th year, you show double again because they give you a 4th and a 5th year, not double the double.
Well, it's the 3rd year. It's the end of the 3rd year for your 4th and 5th year.
Okay, 4th and 5th. And then after the 5th year, they want to make it permanent. How much do they have to show? The answer is 0. Nothing. And that really surprises me.
Because you've proven that you're a good, honourable person. And
but hang on, I might want to spend all of my money, and I will be here then with absolutely 0.
But then you're a permanent resident. You've earned that status. You've been well behaved for 5 years, and you've not left the country for more than 10 months.
I mean, the question came from a man who, in his 4th or 5th year, no, 4th year, he wants to buy.
At some point, it gets easier around in this life.
Yeah, no, he wants to invest in property here. So he said, I don't want to spend up all of my money and not have the amount of funds in the bank to show to get my permanent. But the answer is 0. I didn't know a lot of people knew that. I certainly didn't.
I don't think I was aware of it because I haven't
good
really
behaviour.
I haven't been round that process quite yet, you know.
Pat on the back for good behaviour, is it? Oh, right. Okay. Yeah. And as I was saying, the driving licence, if we want to round up, there is an update yesterday that, as I said, in inverted commas, is really not an update. It just says that we're still waiting to be for the agreement to be heard through the Consejo de Ministros. So quite when that will be, I don't know. Right,
I think I should wind up. I have a lot of people actually listening in live, and I know a lot of people will pick up on this from YouTube and Facebook over the next days. Neil, thank you so much for joining us this evening. I was going to put your phone number there and say, any problems, just phone this man, but I haven't done that.
Not now. I'm going home for tea, so I'd like my tea first, please.
Well, you're a northerner. I have dinner at this time.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Tea is mid-afternoon. Yeah.
So thank you so much. And remember, people, this is the web page. Please check it out. If you have things you would like to go into this website, new resources or new contacts or whatever, please contact them via the website. And I'm sure that will be added in, because this is, as Neil said, it is an ongoing living thing. And maybe some things that are on there, have suddenly stopped, and that needs to come out.
No, we rely on people to keep us updated. We can't be everywhere.
I mean, it's kind of like, I suppose I shouldn't say it, but I will, The Idiot's Guide to Living in Spain.
Right, okay.
Well, we focus on the sort of thing when things go a bit wrong, really. There's enough people writing about golf courses and chiringuitos and everything.
Absolutely.
Sure.
No, and obviously it's important to know what to do when things like that, especially if you're suffering at the time. Yeah.
So, Anne, Neil, thank you so much.
Thank you, Neil. Thank you, Bill.
We will be back next week with Daniela, looking at what's happening around the urbanizations in Mijas. It's almost a weekend, so have a great one, folks. Take care, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.